Today's episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast is brought to you by Poor Richard's Cafe and Star Local Media. Poor Richard's Cafe, Plano's oldest restaurant since 1973. They are open daily from 5:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m., serving the three most important meals of the day: breakfast, lunch, and dessert. It is true Texas home-style cooking made with love and grit. That is Poor Richard's Cafe, located off of Avenue K in Plano. Welcome to another episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast. My name is Matt Welch. I'm the sports editor at Star Local Media, and I am being joined by Brian Murphy and Justin Thomas. After devoting last week to previewing and breaking down the girls basketball playoffs, we are going to stick with the basketball postseason, except taking a look at the happenings on the boys' side, because the boys basketball playoffs begin tonight. We're recording this on a Monday. They start tonight. They really get going in earnest, though, tomorrow. We have, of all the games that we have to cover, I think 90% of them start tomorrow night. A huge start to the boys basketball postseason. So let's break it down. We're going to do as we did last week. We're going to look at 6A and 5A. We're going to go region by region, at least as far as the regions that pertain to our schools. So Region I and Region II for both classifications. We're going to do 4 line changes on this or whatnot. So a lot of different people funneling in and out. And let's start over in 6A with Region I. Certainly the region that, if you're just looking for probably the most top-heavy region in the state, at least from a state ranking standpoint, you not only have number 1, but you have number 2 and number 3 in the final Texas Association of Basketball Coaches state poll, with number 1 Duncanville, number 2 Denton Guyer, and number 3 North Crowley. So just on that premise alone, you're going to have 2 of the top 3 teams in the state not make it to the state tournament, because that region is just loaded at the top. But nevertheless, let's talk about the teams that are within our coverage area, and that is, of course, Lewisville ISD. And Justin, as we return to you,
as well as Coppell.
If there's any of these teams that could potentially upset the apple cart of one of those juggernauts at some point in the postseason, let's see. The Lewisville ISD participants are actually pretty similar to the ones on the girls' side. You have Hebron and Lewisville, and then you have Coppell. Coppell, fresh off that District 6A championship, they draw Keller Timber Creek, which had to win a play-in game to book its playoff spot. So let's start there, Justin. The Cowboys. I don't know how much the district championship seemed like the expectation heading into this new district for them this year, but nevertheless, talk a bit about the Cowboys, the role that they're on, and just what's in store in the first round for them.
Yeah, it wasn't an expectation for me when you look at a couple players that they were anticipating having on the roster this year. One ends up getting injured, KJ Liggins, and then another one ends up transferring out, Quavian Adger, and then they have a first-year coach as well. So a lot of kind of uncertainty, at least from the outside looking in, but when you watch this team play, and once you kind of saw the season get rolling, then I don't think it's a surprise that they're the district champs. They have a great senior leader, point guard Tariq Amon, and they play great defense. They're really tough to score on. That's kind of what they hang their hat on. They're back in the playoffs. They made the second round last year and lost to a tough Rockwell team that was just shooting lights out that game, if I recall. And as
one of the best players in the country, Sam Williamson.
They're back looking to get back to the second round again, and I think they're in a good spot here against Timber Creek. As you mentioned, they had to beat Keller in a play-in game. They actually lost to Keller to need the play-in game, and then beat them in the play-in game to get back their spot. So looks like this could be a defensive-minded game. Timber Creek doesn't look like they really light up the scoreboard or anything, so I think it's a game that could set up pretty well for Coppell here, and they're going to have home court advantage,
It does make for a fascinating what if as to what this Coppell team could have been capable of
if they had those two guys.
Let's see. I don't know. What do you think the ceiling? You saw this team last year. Do you feel like this is a team that, if they were at full strength, could have potentially, and who knows, they still might, but could have really done some serious damage though in the postseason?
Yeah, because those are two guys that would have been big scoring additions for them, but I still think this team defensively, has what it takes. They're going to be in games. Like they've played, they played a really tough non-district schedule, and they played some very good teams, including Rockwell, very tightly. So I think they can, their defense is going to keep them in games.
You look at their potential playoff path. If they were to beat Timber Creek, they would get the winner of Mansfield Lake Ridge versus Lake Highlands, and then the juiciest one would be in the third round, where they would potentially draw. They draw somebody ranked in the top 10, most likely, because perhaps the most overqualified second-round matchup in the state this postseason is potentially Denton Guyer, number 2, against Richardson Pierce, number 9. So, you've got 2 of the best players in the country headlining that matchup with Davion Harmon and then, of course, Jalen Wilson also for Guyer, but then Drew Timme with Pierce.
And district foe for Coppell last year.
Yeah. And so if Coppell can get a couple rounds deep, then they'll get to potentially test their mettle against one of the absolute best in the state. Let's look at on Lewisville ISD's side of the bracket. You have Hebron, a team that has had a bit of a checkered recent history in terms of how the postseason has treated them. They're not in the 1 seed, so hey, maybe it's a blessing in disguise. Yeah,
4th year in the playoffs in a row for them, but like you said, the last 2 years they were district champions and ended up getting bounced in the first round. So this year they're the 3rd seed. They were kind of right in the mix. Some good games with Coppell and Lewisville, just kind of, settled for 3rd. They have one of the funnest players to watch, Logan McLaughlin. He can shoot it from anywhere. He'll pull up from anywhere, but he also will flash a nice dunk on you if you're not expecting it. So he's really fun to watch. They play Byron Nelson. They're going to play 7:30 Tuesday at Dayton Ryan. This is going to be a rematch of a non-district game. They actually played the first game of the season, and Byron Nelson won 51-44. But Hebron was a different-looking team then. They didn't have some of their football guys, especially Darius Snowback, and another team that has a new head coach. So some growing pains early. So I'm not reading into that result too much, and it was a close game either way. So I don't know a whole lot about Byron Nelson, to be honest, so I'm not exactly sure how this one's going to set up for Hebron, but I like the way the Hawks are playing. We're right in there with those Lewisville. They lost in overtime to Lewisville, lost that close game to Coppell. They have a capable scorer, and it's another good team that plays defense, and as long as they can do a good job of rebounding, I think then they're going to be in a good spot too. Okay.
How about with Lewisville? They draw South Lake Carroll, a team that they've shared a district with in the past. So Lewisville, 2nd place in District 6A. What do you foresee in the Farmers from their return to the playoffs?
Well, Lewisville was right in the hunt with Coppell for the district championship going down into the last week, and then they lost their last 2 games, and they didn't have their standout freshman Keontae George in either of those games. He was battling illness when they beat Hebron. He actually didn't have his best game there until he drilled 2 3-pointers in the overtime to get the win, but he ends up not playing the last 2 games. They lose those games, so they end up settling for 2nd. He's been at practice. He's day-to-day, so I'm not sure if he's going to be able to play in this one against South Lake tomorrow, which would, obviously shake things up for them a lot, but still plenty of talent over there. Kylan Green, the sophomore guard, Little Elm transfer KJ Pruitt, who you're going to hear from in a little bit, and excuse me, O.C. Gertman, another athletic guard. So they still have plenty of talent. They still have scoring available. They're going to try to get up and down. They're going to try to force South Lake into turnovers and pressure them. And it's going to be a different if Keontae is not able to play. The guy's averaging 21 points a game. So, and then Carroll comes in. They have a kind of a standout scorer of their own, Brandon Haddock. He's scoring over 22 points a game. Wow. So he's up in the top 10 in the area in scoring too. So Lewisville's going to have their hands full trying to contain him.
Let's see, we'll get to Region 2 in earnest in a bit, but obviously, Brian, with you here, wanted to at least pick your brain for a little bit on one of our Region 2 programs, and that being Prosper. Prosper, which is now, they've made the playoffs in every team sport so far this season. Them and Allen are the only 2 schools in 9-6A to have made the playoffs in all 4 standings-based sports.
And in half of those sports, we projected them not to make the playoffs.
Oh, yeah.
And
what do we know?
If I would have told you Prosper was going to make the playoffs after graduating its best player from last year, Zach Reitzel, who's killing it at Loyola University right now as a true freshman. They graduate Tavian White, their big 6'8" post player, a starter. They have a bunch of new guys coming in. And, they still make the playoffs in that brutal district. Coach Jonathan Ellis, he tweeted out the other day, I thought it was funny. He said, what a whirlwind this coaching gig is, especially these past 2 weeks, but can't imagine doing anything else. And he put all caps playoffs 2019 with a little smirk emoji. It's because no one was picking them to make the playoffs in that district. It was kind of going to maybe be a rebuilding year or something along those lines, especially making that transition to.
And their non-district results kind of aligned with that expectation, but then Mondo Battle enters the equation mid-season.
And Mondo Battle has been a beast down low for the Eagles, and he helps lead them to their most notable win was an overtime win against Jesuit. So they are capable of getting that big win. So South Garland, they should watch out. I've seen South Garland play this year as well when they played Little Elm, a game in which they lost, a game in which they blew a lead that they had at halftime. They were just outplayed completely in the second half. Yeah, you have Tyrese Maxey. Yeah, you have Chris Harris, and those two guys are awesome. Tyrese Maxey is phenomenal. The Kentucky signee. But I wouldn't write Prosper off just yet. Like I said, they've proven that they can win the big game. They've been going through the gauntlet. They've been playing Allen twice. They've played Jesuit twice. The Plano schools are no slouch at all. So they've been playing tough competition. South Garland, that may not be the toughest basketball district, outside of
the boys' side is pretty quality. I wouldn't sleep on the quality of 10-6A as a boys' district.
Not as tough as what Prosper was having to play, on a nightly basis. But when you have Tyrese Maxey and you have Chris Harris, two D1 guys that will be playing good minutes at the D1 level next year, that's still a tough first round draw. So should be more entertaining than what some people are giving Prosper credit for.
I think because it's where the playoffs are really when you get to see the strength of the district really flesh out. Like you're seeing that with with 9-6A on the girls' side right now, where 3 of the 4 playoff teams are now playing in the third round, and you really I think that there's a chance though that this could, because 9-6A versus 10-6A has been it's the by district results have favored 9-6A more times than not. I think that boys basketball though is a chance where the playing field could level out a bit. As far as, at the very least, I'm anticipating that, Allen, as good a season as Allen's had, I think that Wiley can give them a game, and I think that Plano West and Lakeview Centennial can be a solid game as well. And yeah, who knows with what, with whatever, Prosper's able to, Devin Hassan was talking about how South Garland, not too far removed from having this really checkered history in the, in the playoffs and whatnot. So we'll see. I know that's a program that does have, state tournament expectations especially after getting there last year and getting a taste of that with what, Tyrese Maxey and Chris Harris were able to do, and them falling just short of in that pursuit. But nevertheless, it should be a fun one. Hope we get a nice little star-studded first round between these two districts, and I think that you could get maybe a bit more competitive than the results have been in some of these other sports between the two. And that's a good way to transition to getting into that region in earnest. We are going to bring in Taylor Ragland and Devin Hassan to help break down 6A Region 2, and we will do so in just a moment. And let's continue our discussion of the Class 6A boys basketball playoffs. For this, we're going to be talking Region 2, and we have, swapped in Devin Hassan as well as Taylor Ragland to join on the festivities. So, gentlemen, let's go. Let's talk some Region 2, a region that, just looking over the brackets and the state rankings, certainly one of the more talented regions, I think we could say, as far as some teams that you can have a legit discussion about as far as having state championship aspirations. This region has 6 teams ranked in the state's top 17, including 3 in the top 10. The story of this region, it seems, all season, at least from our vantage point, Taylor, has been the dynamic between Allen and Jesuit. These two teams were, you kind of learned early on that they were the two to watch in District 9-6A, and that certainly turned out to be the case as they tied for first place, albeit Jesuit with the head-to-head, the 2 head-to-head victories over Allen. They get the 1 seed, Allen gets the 2 seed, and looking at this road for Allen, Allen, the reigning Class 6A state champions, and if they have any visions of getting back to San Antonio, they're going to have to earn it, because the playoff path from the 2 seed out of 9-6A is it's a tricky one, to put it mildly. Even starting with the first round, they kick off their playoff run tonight. Actually, recording this on Monday, they kick it off tonight from Richardson Pierce against Wiley, a team that isn't ranked but was ranked for the majority of the preseason, and a team that knows Allen all too well, given that they've shared the same district for the past 2 seasons. You think last year with what Allen was able to accomplish, and consider that both those games against Wiley went down to the wire and both were decided by 3 points. Allen won both, but obviously something about that Wiley style of play gave it, at the very least last year's Allen team, some fits. And it is kind of odd, because you have that dynamic where in the first round a lot of times you're getting an opponent that you've never seen before. So there's supposed to be that that lack of familiarity there, where you're having to kind of not necessarily game plan on the fly, but you're strategizing for something brand new. That's not the case with Wiley. Wiley is very familiar with what Allen does, and it's for fans who remember those games last year, not a lot's changed about this Wiley team. They return the bulk of their key contributors from that team last season, and there's a chance that this game could be a little bit tougher than Allen might anticipate out of a first round matchup.
And one quick note on Wiley, John Achibe,
yes,
their outstanding scorer. This is a guy who's capable of he had several 30-point games during the course of the season, and when you have a dynamic scorer like that can get hot in one game, that can be a difference maker at times.
Oh yeah, District 6A learned all too well what John Achibe is capable of. He was named the newcomer of the year last season as a junior. But it is a much different Allen team than the one that had its ups and downs, playing Wiley last season. This team it's one thing that I think works to Allen's favor in this is that there's been Allen's only lost 3 games all season. This is, despite the one state last year, they graduated 4 of their 5 starters, they still somehow had a better regular season than what they did last year. A 32-3 record, tied with North Crowley for the best winning percentage in the 6A Metroplex this season, and that but those 3 losses came against 2 teams, Denton Guyer and then twice to Jesuit. Now both Guyer and Jesuit have a bit of a commonality, and that's they both have some size, have some size in the middle. This is not a big Allen team. They don't have a traditional center, and it's a lot of so that is kind of given Allen some fits. The Jacoby Coles and the Julius Marbles of the world team, guys that could really feast inside on Allen. It looks like this Wiley team though is a bit more to Allen's profile from a physical standpoint. Not a lot of nothing, no sheer size, just a lot of athleticism, a lot of 6'3", 6'4", 6'5" kind of guys, and so you get 2 teams that kind of on paper look pretty similar from a stylistic profile, and so if Allen is able to get past Wiley tonight, then you're looking down the road at potentially drawing Killeen Shoemaker in the second round, the district champion out of 12 6A, ranked number 17 in the state, and then you've got potentially a third round matchup looming with Rockwall, number 8 in the state. It is a gauntlet, to put it mildly. So. Yeah, if Allen has visions on even just getting to the regional tournament, period. It is going to be some tough sledding out of 6A Region 2. Then you have a team like Plano West, which placed as the 3rd seed in District 9 6A. They get another team that there's also going to be some familiarity there with against Garland Lakeview Centennial. Taylor, you've covered this West team in and out this season. Just kind of talk a bit about the Wolves and at least an early look at this matchup Tuesday with the Patriots.
Well, I think the important thing is there is familiarity. West won, I believe it might have been the season opener for both teams. It was 71-55 over Lakeview Centennial, but that was November 9th or something, way early in the season, obviously, where, that result doesn't really hold up if you're trying to just look at, and predict what this game might be like, because Lakeview Centennial was missing a lot of football guys. They were obviously without some of their key pieces. So, even head coach Anthony Morgan at West said that, that's not really indicative of what he expects, Tuesday to be like. For West, last year was a one-man show, and this year it's been a little bit of a two-man show, I think, with Dalen Miner and Ryan Zambi. Yeah. Dalen Miner's been healthy all year, which is big for him. He wasn't last season, obviously. We've talked several times on this podcast that he's a true point guard. He does a really good job both scoring the basketball and distributing the basketball. And if they get the pair of them going, they're usually tough to beat. They were 7-2, I believe, in their last 9 district games, so they come in hot. They come in against the Lakeview Centennial team that Morgan said wants to run it a little bit and wants to get out and go and be a little up-tempo. I think West is pretty comfortable with that. We'll see. West tried to play a little bit of a slower game against Allen just because Allen, likes to do that as well and is so efficient scoring the basketball that you kind of have to do that, and it didn't really work out against Allen. So, maybe a shift to, let's run with them, let's be up-tempo, let's lean on some of these athletes that we have. Ryan Zambi, tremendous athlete. Dalen Miner, really good with the basketball in his hands, which is, something Morgan said that, he's very comfortable with Miner leading that offense. So, I'm expecting a good one. Definitely not a 16-point differential, no. I don't think, between these two teams. It should be up-tempo. It should be a fun one. And if Plano West can not lean too heavily on one guy and can control the pace a little bit without letting it get out of control, without letting it be too up tempo and kind of get buried, then it's possible for them to move on.
The football thing works both ways because Plano West was missing, two of its, or 3-4 best players. You mentioned Dalen Minor playing football, as is Shamar Pearl. They're their anchor inside. So it's going to be a very, very different looking Plano West team for sure in their playoff opener. I just want to go back to Allen because one quick thing. I mean, with Allen, really kind of the big picture question for them is, if they are able to, if they have visions of getting out of Region II, it could very well mean confronting Jesuit once again, which has been the bugaboo for them this season.
It would be a regional final, right?
It would be the regional final. It is very akin to a road that Allen has traveled before, having a team in its own district that they lose twice to during the regular season and then meeting them in the regional finals. It happened with Plano West when Plano West won its first ever state championship back in 2015. It happened last year with Denton Geyer, and there's some even though they were able to get rid of Denton Geyer, not have to share a district with that juggernaut again. Jesuit has kind of been you're kind of in the same spot as you were last season with a Jesuit team that the first game was hyper competitive. Isaiah Stevens just went bonkers, had 42 points. Allen still lost by 6 at home.
And Marble wasn't.
And Marble,
playing
Marble didn't. He played maybe 2 minutes in that game. So and then because that was the game. It was only Allen's second loss of the season at the time. So you're thinking, okay, like pretty much you can circle a game more so than Allen did that Jesuit rematch. Is they put all of their eggs in. Okay, this is their chance to get a little bit of redemption there. Granted, having to travel to Jesuit, which is a very difficult place to play,
tough place to play,
and win. And then they got hammered by Jesuit at full strength. Lost by 17, 19 points?
It wasn't close.
It wasn't a contest. And now, so you're at a point now where if you're Allen, is it just a bad style matchup for them? Because I think that watching, it is weird, kind of like the dynamic between Allen, West, and Jesuit. 3 teams that were, hands down the 3 best teams in District 9 6A. But you look at just how they all fared head to head. Jesuit swept Allen. Despite these 2 teams being neck and neck in the state rankings, Jesuit swept Allen and left little doubt that they're the superior team, at the very least head-to-head in that second meeting. Allen, meanwhile, beat the tar out of West both games, pulled away big in the fourth quarter in each of them, and then you had West and Jesuit split their head-to-head series.
And the one the Jesuit won, I think, was by 5. It wasn't like they were,
So it really is the embodiment of the cliche styles make fights, to whereas while Allen is a better team than Plano West, Jesuit just might be a better matchup for West than Allen, because it might be just the lack of having that true post player like a Shamar Pearl that you can throw at Julius Marble, because despite all the talent at Allen, there was just a stylistic problem there against Jesuit, and it might require something akin to what they had to do last year against Geyer, where they just have to go think just above and beyond and just go completely outside the box with whatever game plan if they are to run into Jesuit for a third time, because I wasn't there for that second game. I was on vacation at the time, and I was very, very surprised, though, to see that Jesuit handled them as well as they did.
Long way off. There's a lot. Like you mentioned, the depth of this region. That's that Allen Jesuit most likely third time likely won't happen.
It's going to be a tough road.
There's a good chance that neither one of those teams even makes the regional tournament or makes the regional final.
Because it would require, because you look at if form does hold in this region, you're looking at a third round matchups, potentially Allen Rockwall and South Garland versus Jesuit. Hey, who knows? Maybe Jesuit gets tripped up by Sachse. We can shift gears to you now, Devin, because this is the game that you're going to be at on Tuesday. The Sachse boys, what a resurgent campaign for them to validate that with a playoff berth now. Granted, it means drawing a district champion that's ranked top 5 in the state or whatnot.
Number
4, yeah. So just talk a bit about, at the very least, what this Sachse team is looking like heading into the playoffs, and what what you're kind of expecting on Tuesday.
It's been a nice story all season long. First year head coach Zach Meixel comes over from Lakeview, inherits a program that won just 2 games overall last season, 1 district game, a program that's really struggled in recent years, and he was determined to turn things around quickly, and he's done just that. They played some good, competition in non-district and was able to build some confidence. We just talked about Plano West. Well, Sachse has a win over Plano West, and wins over, and similar kind of victories early on kind of taught them how to win. A program that just these kids just hadn't had much success, and that carried over to district play. They're not going to wow you. They don't have one of these stars of the region as some of these other programs do, but they're solid throughout. Their guard rotation is their strength with Tyler Blue and Jordan Nichols, Obi Onya, sophomore Dylan McKeon has come on and made a really nice contribution. He had perhaps the moment of the year when he had a last-second three to beat Wiley by 1 point.
Okay.
And that was one of those pivotal games in terms of them making the playoffs. Not as deep on the inside, an area that may hurt them once they get into the playoffs. Chris Sellers has done a good job there in the middle. Zalian Clark is a sophomore that's come on and given him some good minutes, but again, not quite the depth on the inside. But again, they played some good teams in non-district. I think 10-6A is a solid district.
It is.
Top to bottom. When you're having to compete against South Carolina and Lakeview and Wiley, and even teams like Rowlett and North Garland who are capable. Jesuit, though, I know you guys have seen them play.
They're good.
I know you mentioned
and not being deep inside is a bad place to be.
You mentioned Julius Marble and a versatile 6'8" guy that's going to put up a double-double is not something I don't think Sachse is going to have to double team him. Yeah. They're going to have to do something to slow him down, and then Jesuit just turns to
everybody else
Mac Davis or any of those other guards, Gavin Perryman or.
It's the ultimate pick your poison team because Marble is such a force inside, but they just it's basically a 4-out style offense where they just have surrounded with an army of 3-point shooters, and Max Amos is going to win the district MVP in District 9-6A. We talk all about Marble being this matchup problem. Max Amos is what makes that team go. You really just have to pick your poison because if it's not Marble, then it's Gavin Perryman, it's Max Amos, Connor Wilson. They've just got a ton of guys that can hurt you from the outside.
So it's just a tall task. This is a Sachse team. Again, they're back in the playoffs for the first time since 2016. They're not just happy to be there. That was goal number one, was to make it back. But goal number two was to try to make some noise. And albeit they may draw one of the toughest first round assignments out there, but they're a team that's going to be prepared. They've proven that all season long, and they're going to come out with a good game plan. They've had a week probably been looking at Jesuit for over a week since they knew they were going to be the 4 seed. Pretty late in the district year, so I think they're going to come out firing. I think they're going to throw their best shot early, and if they can get out to a good start and build confidence in game, start putting that upset bug in Jesuit's head. Who knows? But it's going to be tough.
The interesting thing is that's kind of what Jesuit's done to everybody this year, though. It's like you game plan for them. Maybe you have an okay first half. You're within a couple possessions.
You got to worry about the third quarter.
And then all of a sudden they're up by 15 at the end of the third, and you're like, what happened?
And that's actually got to keep it close because they don't have the type of game that's going to be able to come back from double-digit deficits late in the second half. So
let's talk about Mesquite, the old Skeeters.
Yeah,
back in the playoffs.
Yes, back after having their 15-year run snapped last year in a play-in game. This was the goal all season long, and they clinched second place with plenty of time to spare. Some might say they're limping into the playoffs. They've lost back-to-back games. 65-62 to Horn, 57-55 to Heath. So it wasn't like they were blown out. And again, their spot was already solidified. So you wonder if they were kind of tweaking, maybe giving some kids some other playing time. It's a very capable Mesquite team. Early on, they beat playoff teams like Lakeview and Sachse. Even if you look at a couple of 5A contenders, they beat Frisco Liberty, they beat Frisco Lone Star, two teams that are regional tournament, state tournament contenders down there. So they're very capable. Cody LeBlanc is a guy that just unlimited range. He had one of the best offensive performances I've seen this year. Early on against North Mesquite, he's just a guy. He averages about 17, 18 points a game, but he's capable of 30, 35, 40 points, and just a lights-out shooter. Grant Stewart is kind of their energizer guy in the middle, 6'6", plays with a lot of emotion. Team kind of feeds off him. He's capable of a double-double every night, too. And they have some other nice pieces. DeAndre Heath is a very nice guard. He kind of runs the offense, sets up the other guys. Braylon Hall's come on strong recently. And Atheon Wool's kind of one of those, doesn't show up in the stat sheet but does all the other little things and kind of comes through in those areas. So I think Mesquite is kind of flying under the radar. They were state ranked for a couple weeks this year, but they've been a little up and down even throughout the district slate with a couple losses to Heath but they did beat Rockwall in their second meeting. And I mentioned those early non-district wins. They played a Waco Midway team that Don't know too much about. I believe Diego Gonzalez is a guard that I'd heard of early in the season when Midway was playing some tournaments. They're a little banged up otherwise, I think, at the guard position. But the key here is going to be in the middle. They have Levi Whidden, a 6'8" center or post, and God's Gift. Ezedinma, I'm just going to guess. I got the God's Gift part though right, because that's pretty easy to say. But he's a 6'7" post. So when you got two guys that tall running against a Mesquite team that has Grant Stewart at 6'6", but not a lot of height after that, and so that's going to be, I guess, probably the key to the game right there. Is Grant Stewart? I mentioned he's an energetic guy, but he gets in some of these high energy games and has a tendency to get in foul trouble early on. And when you're going against two big posts like that, you can't afford to have him out of the game and having to run a bunch of 6'2" and 6'3" guys with that kind of height difference. So again, it's a Midway team we don't know too much about. We don't know too much about 12-6A. You mentioned Shoemaker. Waco Midway actually was tied for second in that district heading into the finale, and then lost their finale to fall back to the third seed. So I think they're a very capable team. Waco Midway all around their athletic programs, they're always solid in all sports. So I expect a pretty even matchup as you would from a 2 versus 3 seed, and we'll see what happens. The winner gets South Carolina or Prosper. So
it does seem impossible to say that there's an on-paper favorite to come out of this region. As loaded as it is.
There's no way.
You have 4 teams in the top 10, and you can make a strong case for any of them.
Yeah. Oh, without a doubt.
Yeah.
And as we've seen from some of those other results, I mentioned Mesquite knocking off Rockwall. I think Plano West has some good wins,
including Rockwall.
And I think you look at there's 4 prohibitive favorites, but there's a lot of teams. They can't look ahead to think, okay, we're going to have these marquee matchups in the regional quarters, because there's a lot of teams there that can trip you up.
Leave that to dopes like us to prognosticate on that stuff. And that is a look at Region 2-6A, certainly one of the more star-studded regions that we'll be covering throughout the high school basketball postseason. I'm going to shift gears to 5A talk in a sec, but first, that student athlete spotlight, got to shine that. And for this one, Justin Thomas went out to Lewisville to talk with KJ Pruitt. The Farmers are back in the playoffs, ready to embark on their postseason campaign. Justin had a chance to catch up with KJ Pruitt, talk a bit about that season and his progress in his first season with Lewisville, and we will see what he had to say after a word from the sponsor. Today's podcast is brought to you by Star Local Media. 14 newspapers and websites with a print distribution of 270,000 homes and monthly page views of 600,000 online. Star Local Media, your community voice for news. And now, let's get back to the podcast.
All right, we're here with KJ Pruitt, junior guard for the Lewisville Fightin' Farmers. KJ, thanks for taking a few minutes to join us here on the Star Local Media Sports Podcast.
No problem.
Well, congratulations on making it to the playoffs. I know you guys are getting ready for a big game with the Dragons on Tuesday. So just talk about how things have finished up for you and kind of the mindset of the team going into this playoff game.
We're just really preparing for our first playoff game. Last year, it was a little different. They didn't make it to playoffs, and it was just a different year.
Yeah.
But now with different coaches, new players, we're just really trying to get experience and see what we can do tomorrow. Get a dub.
You mentioned last year, pretty dramatic turnaround for you guys, finishing in last place and then coming all the way up and getting up to second place this year. What is it about this team? What do you think this team? How are you able to have this success so far?
Really, I say Coach Miller and Coach Watson pushing us real hard in practice, and us seeing last year what happened. It can't happen again. We got I came, Keontae came. Players matured.
Yeah.
And we just really turned it around and we got second. Really could have got first.
Yeah,
but things happen. But we got second from last year. Last in district behind Irving. That's kind of.
So you mentioned you arriving. You spent your first 2 years at Little Elm. What's it been like coming over here to Lewisville this season?
Really just coming back home.
Because you were here during middle school, you said?
Yeah, I went to Hufflines 6th to 8th grade. I was living in Lewisville my whole life, and then I went to Little Elm, play for Coach Siegler, play with RJ. And then last year in the summer, around the end of the school year, I was talking to my dad, and I was coming to open gym up here, and Coach Miller, he had just came, and him and Coach Watson were telling me how I could really change things and how things could be different. I could lead a team, and he was just telling me it could prepare me for college. And I just took it and it took off from there.
So you have a pretty young team, and at least in terms of kind of experience playing with each other coming into the year. What were your guys' expectations Are you guys surprised at all at how you've performed throughout the year, or is this kind of what you guys were expecting?
I mean, really, you have like 2, maybe 3 returning varsity players like from last year, and everybody else is from JV. So like me thinking, you know, like even I was just my junior year. I mean, really, I was like, I don't know like how it would look, you know, because I mean they wanted me to lead, and I'm a junior, so I was like, I'm only been in it for 2 years, but I mean I took on the leadership role. I led us. I mean, you got Keontae, a freshman, played really, really well. I mean, so it was just different. I didn't expect it. Like it was really different. You know, I was just like, let's keep it going.
How would you describe this team? What is it like when you look at your team? How would you describe you guys?
I say we're a transition team. When we're playing fast, we're getting up and down. I feel like that's when we're at our peak. Like, you know, we're athletic. We run. I feel like that's when we're at our best, is when we're in transition.
Talk a little bit about the district you guys came out of and how you feel that's kind of prepared you guys for the postseason here.
I mean, really, we lost our first district game to Coppell by a buzzer beater. And then we lost to Hebron by a buzzer beater. Then we lost to MacArthur by last 5 seconds left in the game. So I really feel like those games, like, prepared us, like, I mean, it's really on us. Like, because when we played Coppell again, we beat them by, like, 15 plus. So I was just like, it's really how we come out and play. Like, we were letting teams come out on us, and we was in the games with other teams. We really weren't ourselves. But when we're in transition, like I said, like all the games we won, I think we won like 10-4 or something like that in district. I feel like that's when we're at our best.
I'm sure you've got starting to look at Southlake a little bit. What do you kind of see from your opponent coming up tomorrow, and how are you guys kind of approaching this game?
Really, we're just preparing for number 20 or number 10, whatever. I think number 20 is a good guard.
Haddock. Yeah,
we're just preparing for him. Like, you know, he shoots a lot. Like, we're just really maintaining on him. You know, they got some other good players, I mean, some shooters, but really we're just trying to prepare for them in their zone that they'll be in.
What's it going to take in these playoffs for you guys to look back and feel like you accomplished your goals and took care of what you needed to do?
Really just take care of business. Like, we've been going really hard in practice. Like, if we translate everything we're doing in practice to tomorrow and then say who knows next round, like everything will go good. I feel like we'll be up there, especially changing history around here. I know that.
All right, KJ, anything else you wanted to mention?
No, just gonna get ready for tomorrow.
Well, we appreciate you joining us on the Star Local Media Podcast, and if you guys want to check out the Farmers, you can see them tomorrow at Grapevine.
Thank you.
Thanks, KJ.
Appreciate it.
Thanks again to KJ Pruitt for taking the time to chat with Justin for our Student Athlete Spotlight. And with that, let's continue talking. Let's continue previewing the boys basketball playoffs. And with that, we're now going to shift gears to Class 5A and a look at Region I. We've only got 2 schools in Region I within our coverage area, but 2 pretty high-profile programs. Both teams finished the year ranked in, I guess, the state's top 11. Both were in the top 10 for a good portion of the season. The final state rankings, though, have Little Elm at number 10 and the Colony at number 11. How fitting, considering how closely contested those 2 games were between the Cougars and the Lobos. So, and honestly, like, you look at how that ended up affecting the layout of this, the playoff seedings and how the brackets look, and you might say that it actually is perhaps a bit more to the Colony's advantage to have gotten that 3rd seed versus Little Elm being in 2nd place when you look at the playoff road for both programs. So let's start with the Cougars. You know, Justin, they draw, same team the girls drew in the first round, right?
Yep,
Colleyville
Heritage, yes.
So we'll see. That game was actually pretty competitive, wasn't it?
The girls' game, they were down by 4 points with 45 seconds left and finished on an 8-0 run.
Wow, that's really tough to do.
And then,
I didn't realize
just real quick.
Yeah.
Then they had an awesome comeback again. They were down 12 in the 3rd quarter on Friday, come back and win. And so I'll be out there tonight when they play Mansfield Legacy, and I'm pretty excited for this game.
Yeah, I mean,
anyway.
It's all sorts of positive mojo going throughout the Colony's basketball programs right now. Can the boys keep it rolling? Just talk a bit about the Cougars, who enter as the 3rd seed out of District 8 5A as they prep for their own matchup against Colleyville Heritage. Yeah,
so Colleyville obviously finishes 2nd. They're going to play 7 o'clock Tuesday out at Lewisville. So 2nd year in a row for Colleyville Heritage, but it's a team that hasn't won a playoff game since 2013. 2nd year in a row for the Colony as well. Their last playoff win came back in 2016. They've been a state-ranked team, top 10, top 15 all year. You look in the district, they only lost 4 games in district. They lost 4 games to 2 to Northwest, 2 to Little Elm, they lost those 4 games by a combined 9 points, all 4 games. So,
wow.
like every game was either 1 point, 2 point, or 3 points. So, they're right there from, possibly being the district champs. They're super experienced. They have a trio of seniors, Bryce Okpo, Luis Rodriguez, and Garen Davis, who you guys have seen on the podcast recently. They play good defense. Keith Miller is like playing really well, the football standout.
Keith Miller's big.
Yeah,
man.
he's big.
Obviously I saw him in the football season, pads on from afar, he doesn't look as big. When I saw them play Little Elm, last week, Keith Miller is massive.
And he's only boards, a junior. He can score in the paint.
Yeah.
They have their 5th starter, Terry Mosier, can hit some outside shots. They're going to play good defense under Coach Ryan and pretty balanced. Looking at Heritage, they have a player that's scoring 21 points a game, Baylor Hebb, so I'm sure that's going to be the Colony's focus defensively. Not too sure, how he goes about scoring his points, but just looking at the box scores, he had numerous games of more than 30 points. So he's definitely seems like a player that can, carry a team to a victory. So they're going to have to, slow him down, and I'm guessing that's what their focus is going to start on.
Little Elm. Let's talk about Little Elm, Brian. The Lobos are back in the playoffs once again. They enter as the number 2 seed out of District 8-5A. Much like the Colony, very, very competitive back and forth between them. Those two plus Justin Northwest, which got the top seed. It's been the Little Elm season definitely took the narrative definitely changed down the home stretch. So let's talk a little bit about that and just kind of how the Lobos are faring as they embark on another playoff run.
Their level of play on the court hasn't changed since what you're alluding to, the departure of Trey White. With just 3 games left in the district season, one of the games that they played after White left was against Northwest. Yeah. And they'd beaten them prior in the first meeting at Northwest. The rematch at Little Elm went to overtime, and they fouled a 3-point shooter. In the final seconds, Northwest wins by 3 in overtime.
So the anti-Colony game.
And the same thing happened in Little Elm's favor the next game when they played the Colony, when Luis Rodriguez maybe fouled RJ Hampton. It was close, but not quite. But anyway, so, they were very close to beating Northwest twice this season. They've beaten South Garland. They've beaten the Colony twice. They've beaten some great teams. And what I'm kind of getting at here, I'm not trying to overlook Grapevine, but the Achilles heel of this Little Elm program in the last few years has been that second round. And they've gotten by the first round. They've beaten Wakeland and whatnot in the first rounds over the past couple of years. But then once the second round hits, we all know what happened against West Mesquite 2 years ago. We all know what happened, at A&M Commerce when they played Mount Pleasant 2 years ago. Mount Pleasant hit every single 3-pointer they shot. Not really, but it felt that way. Little Elm was the better team, but they lost that game. And it's only fitting that if they happen to beat Grapevine tomorrow, they will have to play
the number 3 team in the state.
In Mansfield Timberview. Just a basketball powerhouse on the boys and girls side. Yep. And man, they should have lost to the Colony. They should have just let them win, or they should have lost that last game against Broswell. But to be the best, you have to beat the best, and they've beaten some of the best teams in the state already this season. So I don't think they're looking at Timberview as like, oh great, the second round woes are really going to hit us this year. But that's going to be interesting to see.
That is
it could be a Friday night matchup, second round, and can they get over that second round hump against the number 3 team in the state?
Well, I hope they can, because if they can and the Colony can get to the third round, what a juicy matchup that would be.
Perhaps the biggest installment of that rivalry.
And so Trey White, he was averaging 16 points, 9 rebounds. And if you're looking at the numbers, if a couple of these guys just step up, just boost their scoring average just by a couple points, like guys like Brandon Crossley, who we know, a football stud going to Colorado State. He's the most athletic player on the basketball team. He'll guard their best, perimeter player. If he can just get a couple more shots in a game. Will Harris, another football stud, 6'6", combo type forward, post player type guy. If he can get a couple more buckets. Draylon Rose, another football stud, who's taking now that starting role. He's a wide body. He's a big man, 6'3". He plays bigger than he is too. If he can get a couple more shots in the paint, get a couple more rebounds. And then it also helps when you have, RJ Hampton averaging 32 points per game. he averages close to a triple-double. I don't know how accurate those stats are, but he's more than capable of dropping, 30, 40-point triple-double any given night. Last year's 5A Player of the Year, right there with Tyrese Maxey as the best player in the state, in my opinion. So when you have him, anything is possible, but, you got to get by Grapevine first, and then that second-round matchup that has been just killer for Little Elm these last 2 seasons. Should be going down against one of the top teams in the state. Should be fun.
We can pivot now to round out the podcast with a look at Region II over in Class 5A. Obviously, Brian, you've got plenty of teams that are in that region, so we'll keep you on board. And now we'll bring in Devin Hassan and Taylor Ragland to round out that part of the podcast, and we will do so in just a moment.
All right, and welcome back. We've done another line change. I'm still here. I'm Brian Murphy, as you know, but we brought in Taylor Ragland, Devin Hassan here for the final segment. We're going to be talking 5A Region 2, boys playoff picture here. I have a lot of teams.
AKA the Brian segment of the program.
It's pretty much the Frisco region. 4 Frisco teams are in this thing: Frisco Liberty, Frisco High, Frisco Wakeland, and Frisco Lone Star. Frisco Lone Star is actually tipping off tonight in the rare Monday night game. They're facing Denison. Don't know too much about Denison. Should be a good matchup. Lone Star tied with Frisco Liberty for the district title in District 9 5A. But I'll be there at that game, so I'll get the full lowdown if y'all want to follow me on Twitter on that one, at Brian Murphy _ for live tweets and updates there. We also have Carrollton Newman Smith in this district.
Yeah.
I know that's JT's jurisdiction there. They play Dallas Spruce. Don't know much about them. That could be a winnable game for
Newman Smith. Yeah,
for Newman Smith, and then they would have the daunting task of facing McKinney North and Wakeland. Kendrick Johnson is our McKinney guy. He's been ranting and raving about McKinney North boys basketball, not girls basketball, but boys basketball all season long.
Yep.
They dominated District 10 5A. They'll take on Wakeland. Wakeland kind of a surprise team in the Frisco district, getting in there as that 4 seed. A really young team, loaded, with freshmen and sophomores that play really, really heavy minutes there. I don't know. I don't know if I'm hearing things that could be a blowout, but I think Wakeland can keep it a little close.
It seems like one of those games where maybe you don't want to say Wakeland's happy to be in the postseason because Wakeland obviously is a school that has a lot of tradition and a lot of success in a lot of different sports. So anytime they get in the postseason, they're trying to make a little noise. They're trying to advance.
They have the most state titles out of any other Frisco team.
But you look at McKinney North and like you said, the things that Kendrick's been saying all season about these Bulldogs. I mean, they swept the other McKinney ISD schools, Boyd and McKinney. Really good game, OT game with McKinney that North ended up winning. Obviously cruised through their district, a district championship. And it seems like they have kind of a little bit of a two-headed monster. They have talent, it seems like, all over the court. But, Chris Busey, it seems like, has been really good from the perimeter, really good shooting the basketball. He had a big shot against McKinney to help send that one to overtime, I believe. He's a senior, he's a leader. It seems like he's having a really good season after, I believe, not playing a whole lot in his career up to this point, but really has come on strong. And then Brandon Frazier inside, a junior post, a big man that's been pretty dominant throughout. It seems like he's had multiple games, 20 plus, and it seems like he's a problem inside to deal with. So, it seems like one of those slam dunk first round matchups where, McKinney North's just been cruising and kind of beating up on everybody, but you never know. But I would think that the Bulldogs just, how good they've been, how consistent they've been. They have threats kind of all over the floor. So I would think that they take down Wakeland. But as you said, you never know. You never know.
Back in November, they had wins over Prosper, other playoff teams like Mesquite Poteet, who we'll talk about here in a sec. But those November games, it's hard to gauge. They maybe didn't have some of their football guys, or some other teams. Prosper didn't have Mondo Battle for that game. But still, nonetheless, those are still quality programs. But that leads me to Mesquite Poteet. They're playing Ennis in the first round. I think it's in DeSoto, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And what's kind of going on with Poteet heading into the playoffs?
Poteet is almost an overlooked team. Just because of the side of the region. We talk about the Frisco schools and obviously match up with McKinney North. Well, Poteet falls on the other side of that region. I mean, they get the East Texas and like in Ennis in the first round. So it's kind of hard to measure up just because they're kind of an outlier in terms of the teams or the way the region is set up. But I like this Poteet team. DJ Basie is a 6'9" post. He scored 32 points in their season finale against Kaufman. He doesn't usually score that much, but he does average about 13 points a game, pulls down 8 rebounds, blocks 4 shots. The kind of production you expect from a kid with not just that 6'9", but long wingspan.
Right.
And he gives them a presence. He's shooting 76% from the field. So that tells you that most of his shot attempts are dunks, layups, putbacks. He does most of his damage right around the rim. Tyler Jones is a senior point guard who runs the offense. He also scores. He averages 10 to 12 points a game. Leads the team in assists. Really cool down the stretch. And also in the games that I've seen them play this season have been close, but when it gets down to the last 2 minutes, he's got the ball in his hands and he delivers. He shoots 80% from the free throw line, which is a huge thing to have. A go-to guy from the charity stripe. How many games have we seen lost when teams are going 8 of 20 in the fourth quarter from the free throw line when they're getting fouled? So outside of those two, they got a lot of good role players where a lot of different people can step up at a given time. Javante Valdez has been a really good three-point shooter for them. Lewis Moore, Jalen Alexander, Javante Police, King Moore has come on and added some depth along with DJ Basie at forward. So, they've got a solid team there to maybe put together a run. You look at what the Poteet girls have done. Not many people talked about them, but they're one of the teams in the regional quarterfinals. But it was hard to project because their road went through Midlothian and then Jacksonville. And, you look at Poteet's road and it's similar. Ennis is a team, they're 11-18. So you wonder, is that record indicative because they're battle tested from a very tough district, or is that record, explain who they really are?
Right.
So it's really hard to kind of project how good Ennis is going to be. And then same thing goes in that next round where you have, 16 5A champion Lufkin or Lindale. What teams that don't come to this part of the area, but yet you see them in the second round of this region, just the way it's drawn up. So maybe Poteet, just like the girls, if they get past Ennis, you go give them a fighting chance against one of those other East Texas schools, and they may be one of the teams that we're talking about next week in the regional quarterfinals.
Sure. Frisco against Lovejoy. That matchup kind of intrigues me for multiple reasons. So Frisco, starting off district, they had an overtime win against Liberty. And we all know what Liberty's been doing. We'll talk about them here in a little bit in their matchup against Princeton. But, Frisco, they started off hot. They were in first place. I think they won their first 5 games. And then they strung together some bad losses. Yeah. They lost to Wakeland. They even lost to Memorial, an up-and-coming program there in Frisco, a non-playoff team. But they finished off the district season strong. They closed it out with a win over Lone Star in the very final game of district. They, like I said, they've beaten Liberty. Now they've beaten Lone Star. They finished 12-6, the number 3 seed in 9-5A. And there's just something about this Frisco team that, they're beatable, but they're also so dangerous at the same time. And I think, Lovejoy finished second in that district, and I think it's a tough first-round draw for Lovejoy.
Yeah, they finished second, obviously, only to McKinney North, who, as we mentioned, cruised through that district. Lovejoy has played Frisco a couple times. And beaten Frisco a couple times this season. I believe that the most recent was, right after Christmas in those holiday tournaments. So a little bit indicative, maybe. By that time, usually, teams are fully stocked and kind of gearing up for the second half of district. In the Frisco district's case, I mean, they may have already started. Who knows with their schedule? But the vibe that I haven't been out to see Lovejoy this season, but the vibe that I get from them is, they're a program that made the postseason last year, got bounced in the first round. Really young, kind of akin to a Wakeland. Really young, good, but just not quite ready to take that next step, maybe. And this season they return, I think their top 4 scorers. They have like 7 seniors. They're led by, senior Kyle Olson, I think is a pretty big leader for them. And it just seems like maybe they're that team that's ready to take that next step. They make the postseason, they grow up a little bit, they get a little chemistry, they bring back basically everybody, and then you go into the playoffs with a different level of expectation. And I think they're going to enter pretty confident, hopefully not overconfident if you're a Lovejoy fan from those 2 victories over Frisco, but it seems like Lovejoy is pretty balanced, playing well. Obviously a good district performance outside of those losses to McKinney North, which seemed like the juggernaut of that league. So yeah, it should be an interesting one, man. You never know though. You never know.
This is one of those where I think you could flip a coin.
Yeah, it's going to be tight.
It can literally go either way. Frisco, they have a win over McKinney North in non-district play also this year. They played Prosper tough. early or late in November, I should say. You just never know what Frisco team you're going to get.
Sounds like they're all over the place.
Yeah, it might be exactly. It might on both sides. It might be which team shows up.
Yeah.
Does the Frisco team that's competed with all these high-profile teams show up?
Yeah.
Does the Lovejoy team that's ready to take the next step show up, or are they? Because they don't have a lot of playoff experience, even though they return everybody. They got bounced in the first round last year. So are they actually ready to take that next step? So it may depend on both sides which program you get.
Or is it the Frisco team that lost by 1 to Reedy, a non-playoff team, or lost, like I said, to Memorial?
Yeah.
But then you turn around and you beat Liberty in overtime, and you also beat Lone Star to close out the season. I mean, it's like a box of chocolates. You'll never know what you're going to get with Frisco. But should be a good one. And rounding out, the Frisco action, Liberty against Princeton. Liberty, they close out district on a 9-game winning streak. Zion Richardson, last season's 13-5A district MVP. He is balling right now. He could be the front runner once again for that accolade. He dropped 40 points in the season finale against Frisco Heritage to seal the co-district championship with Lone Star. Lone Star lost, obviously, their last game to Frisco, so they tied in co-district champions. And it didn't look like Liberty was going to, have a shot at the co-district championship. Lone Star was rolling. They, Liberty had lost to Lone Star pretty badly early in the year. And like I said, they lost to Frisco in overtime in the season opener. But they are red hot. You have probably the best player in the district, balling out of his mind. And I think Liberty, they could make a nice little run here. I'm projecting them to beat Princeton, and then the next round would be against Kimball or Conrad. I would take my chances with Liberty there, and Liberty hasn't had some success, in these opening rounds of the playoffs, or I should say in the second round of the playoffs. We'll see how that goes.
So you called your shot with a Liberty and Lone Star girls regional final. Are you going to?
Well, I was going to save that for our next podcast as a teaser for our next show later this week. Yeah, no, the Liberty girls and Lone Star girls. There's still a few games to play, but I'm fully expecting them to play Saturday at 2 o'clock, I believe, at the Kohl Center in the regional final.
The boys, are you mentioning that prediction on the boys' side as well?
That would be fun. That would be one heck of a story. If that happened and the girls happened, then I could mesh those together and something crazy could happen. But that's still.
We haven't even got to the first round. I could push you on the spot just yet. We're not even past by district for the boys. So.
I say that now. Lone Star's going to lose tonight. Liberty's going to lose tomorrow, and then all that's for naught. So, but we'll see, and we'll talk a little bit more later this week about potential Liberty Lone Star girls showdown in the regional final, but still many games to play. But that's going to wrap it up for our boys discussions. Make sure to stay tuned later this week for our girls discussion reactions from the third round. There's a lot of juicy third round matchups. Plano, Prosper, Liberty, Centennial. That's not a lock right there. So make sure to stay tuned for that later this week. That's Taylor Ragland. I'm Brian Murphy. Devin Hassan. We'll talk to you then.